Nobody will force you to save or to invest. There's no external pressure to do either of those two things. Everything else that you spend money on has a bit of external pressure. There's a bit of external pressure to give. There's a bit of external pressure on your rent and on your expenses. But there's no external pressure forcing you to invest or to have an emergency fund. You need to be that pressure. Hello everyone, my name is Modupe and today we will be building your monthly budget. We audited your accounts and we arrested the leaks. Now, where will you put that money? Today we will be turning that understanding of your cash flow into an intentional spending plan. Something that is decisive, not incidental or based off inertia. That's why some people will tell you budgeting doesn't work, because they never really align their budgeting with the reality of what they spend money on. What we need now is an intentional spending plan, a deliberate allocation of your money in line with your priorities. Quick reminder before we start, everything we cover is for education only. I'm not a financial advisor and nothing here should be taken as financial advice. If you do need financial advice, please consult a licensed professional. One principle that I need you to take away today is that the only bad expense is one that you didn't plan for. Budgeting isn't about restricting yourself or being super disciplined. It's about being intentional about what you spend your money on. It's about having a plan for your money and spending your money according to that plan. When you plan for your spending, even if it is spending on fun stuff, then you take away the guilt or feeling bad, because even if it is, I planned to spend this money on jollof or on just having fun, while you are spending the money and having the fun, you won't have any guilt because it is in line with your plan. Now, the idea is not to adopt certain percentages, because if you go online, you see all sorts of recommendations in terms of how should I allocate my money, how much money should I allocate to this. At the end of the day, only you can decide what's the right allocation to whatever bucket, because you don't want to adopt a spending plan that someone else gave you that is not in line with your goals or your values. You need to adopt something that you will be able to stick to for the long term. So if your budget does not reflect your values, if it does not reflect your intention or your goals, then it will be difficult to stick to. What we'll do today is basically talk about the 4 broad buckets that I allocate my funds to. We'll look at them and the percentages that I personally consider to suit my goals, and then we'll take it from there. So the first bucket I usually work with is giving. Now, giving capture things like your tithes if you're a Christian. If you're not a Christian or you don't tithe, you could include things like charity. But the same bucket also includes anything you're giving, maybe family support back home, black tax, any regular financial responsibility that goes to other people. Maybe you're supporting someone back home through school, or you're just helping. That's where this sits. Now, this is the rule that I try to apply. Giving should be a percentage and it should be capped. When I say capped, it means you have decided that 20% or 15% of my money every month goes to giving. Maybe out of that, I'll take out tithes. Out of that, I will give to family members. Out of that, I'll support the person I'm supporting. Once you've reached the 20% or the 15% or whatever the percent you've selected, that's it for the month. If someone reaches out to you, then you really do not have the resources. You can't give what you don't have. You need to let them know this money doesn't exist, will not exist until next month. If they cry about it, then join them to cry. If they need to take a loan, fine. We can take a loan, I'll pay you back next month. But don't put yourself under undue pressure to be able to meet a request, because that's where resentment starts to build up on both sides. Once people understand that this is how you are, oh, I've spent what I had for this month, everything that is left now is just to sustain me till next month. It is what it is. No one can say go and sell your house or give what you don't have, right? But when you put yourself under undue pressure and then you give, in most cases you're not able to give the amount you probably would have preferred to give if they had given you that time. Or it could be that the person at the receiving end would not get the amount they actually need. Or it could be that you give them what they asked for, but then you start to feel resentment because you've sacrificed something that you actually needed to be able to give it. And you can't really explain it to them because they won't understand. So you don't want to go into that territory of giving beyond what you actually allocated for giving. So stick to it. It should be a percentage. It should be capped. The other reason why it should be a percentage is it also helps you to know when to increase it. So let's say you're supporting someone back home, for instance, and you're starting to wonder. There's this conversation I typically have with my friends that I'll be like, I don't even know what's 50,000 naira now. Is it a lot? Is it small? So you don't have an idea of how much you can give someone that they will really appreciate it, because you sort of over time you lose your sense of what money is worth in a country that you are not living in. Because if inflation in that country is different from inflation in UK, so it's difficult to gauge how expensive things are now. One trick some people do is convert to pounds, but inflation in naira, inflation in pounds have not been at the same rate. So the fact that you can convert something to the different currency might help, but it's not always a guarantee. But by sticking to the simple rule of this is the percentage of my income that I will give every month. Of that percentage, these are the people that I will give to. You can leave a bit of a margin for any unexpected requests as well. So these are the groups of people I'm giving to. This is the amount for tithing or charity. This is the amount for family. This is the amount for unexpected black tax. Now, if your salary does increase, then you can increase how much you are giving those people without worrying, because it's not really your responsibility to increase how much you're giving if your own income hasn't increased. Otherwise, you will put yourself in a situation where you are giving what you don't have or what you can't afford to give. You could rebalance within that bucket and say, oh, because inflation has gone up and I'm supporting this person that is really important to me, I'll reduce the amount I've allocated to emergency black tax and increase the amount I've allocated to supporting this family member. You could do that, but your total giving bucket shouldn't increase unless your income has increased. Again, none of this is cast in stone, but that is how I think about it. Now, the second bucket is the one I'm most excited about because that's the one most people actually ignore. It's growth. And it's the one bucket that will make sure that you are not regretting your life at age 89, or that will make sure that you'll be able to meet your financial goals for the next 10 years. Nobody will force you to save or to invest. There's no external pressure to do either of those two things. Everything else that you spend money on has a bit of external pressure. There's a bit of external pressure to give. There's a bit of external pressure on your rent and on your expenses. But there's no external pressure forcing you to invest or to have an emergency fund. You need to be that pressure. You need to give yourself that defined percentage of your monthly income that will go into this bucket. In this bucket, we have your savings, your investments, and the most important item that is in this bucket that should actually come first before your savings and investments is debt payment, especially high interest debt. Now, you need to distinguish between high interest debt and low interest debt. High interest debt are things like your credit card payments where you have interest rates of up to 30%. I do not know any investment that I can do now that is guaranteed to give me 30% returns. But if I am servicing a loan that is charging me 30% interest, by reducing how much I owe, I've already gained that 30% back. So it's almost effectively an investment. So for me, prioritize high interest debt repayments. If it's low interest debt, if it's something like mortgage that is 4%, you can choose to overpay. Personally, I would, but it's still relatively low, right? It's closer to inflation. If it's even lower than inflation, even better. But anything that is in double digits, 20-30%, I would rush and pay ASAP. Because for me, it's like me investing in something and getting 30% returns back. So this is the most important bucket that we will talk about today because it's the one that is going to fuel your financial future, all the things we talked about on day one. It's the one that is actually going to make sure that you can move your net worth from where we saw it on day two to where you want it to be in 10 years. Now, the third bucket is life. You can't dodge it so long as you live in this planet. You have to pay your bills. So this will cover things like your rent, your utility bills. It would also cover your mortgage as well, or any low interest debt repayment, because what we talked about on the second bucket was high interest debt repayment. So if you have a debt repayment but the interest rate is low, then you could also move it here. But this will cover your rent, your mortgage, utility bills, council tax, energy bills, internet, transportation, TFL, food and groceries. So usually this is where you spend the bulk of your money. This is where you've been spending the bulk of your money. But because we prioritize the other buckets, then you can find ways to control how much goes into this place. So it's not just a limitless sinkhole that is draining your funds without any restrictions. The last bucket is your entertainment bucket. I call it your jollof bucket, or as young people say, your oble bucket. This bucket is actually quite important because this is the one most people do not budget for. They don't plan for entertainment, but they know that they will spend money on entertainment, but they don't put a number to it. Like we said, the only bad expense is the one that you do not budget for. Once you budget for it, then it is accounted for in your financial infrastructure and you'll be able to cope. So in this bucket, you would have things like eating out, going to restaurants, hanging out with your friends, going out on dates, going bowling. You should also leave room for unplanned jollof, like unplanned things that would happen, like going to the pub with your colleagues. Someone is doing birthday and you are contributing for card. Unexpected visits from a friend or from family members that you need to entertain. Anything that you spend money on, you should have that budget for it. Now, you can't eliminate this, so it's better you plan for it. The way someone put it was, when enjoyment has its own lane, then it stops hijacking everybody else's lane. So if you plan for it, then you won't be forced to take from other areas that you actually budgeted for. But the good thing is, the fact that you budgeted an amount for enjoyment in a month doesn't mean you have to spend it that month. So let's say you know, for instance, that every 2-3 months or so, there's this team bonding event in your office, and you guys will go out and you might be tempted to spend money during that event. Or you know there's something coming up in a couple of months, maybe in summer, where currently in winter you won't be spending that money, but you have a budget for that enjoyment. So you keep putting it aside for that July spend. Now, when it comes to the percentages that I allocate to each of these 4 buckets, it's not evenly split because some of them will definitely take more than others. For instance, when you look at your life bucket, again, this is flexible. Nothing is cast in stone, but it's the decision that you need to consciously make. So I allocate about 15-20% to giving. I allocate another 20% to growth. Then roughly 50-60% goes to life, and then the remaining 10% goes to enjoyment. The exact percentages are going to be different for everybody. For instance, depending on where you live in the UK, if you live in London, for instance, your rent might be up to 50% of your income. If your rent is already 50% of your monthly spend, then you definitely need to allocate more than 50% for your life bucket. Meanwhile, if I'm living in Manchester, then maybe rent is only like 25% of my income. Then I can keep life at about 40% if I want and have more room for the others. So you can adjust and tweak, but the good thing is you have history to look at and say, okay, how have I been spending money? Can I adjust it to fit into these buckets? So that's the exercise for today. Look at all the items that you regularly spend money on over the last 6 months. Try and allocate each of them under these 4 buckets and see what your percentage comes to without you tweaking anything. Then ask yourself those questions. Can I adjust this so that it's more aligned with my long-term goals? Can I increase or make room if necessary for the growth bucket? Because that's really the engine of your financial future. So that's the question you need to answer. You can start small. You can start by saying, okay, I'll pay myself tithes. If you read The Richest Man in Babylon, that's actually how the guy started. He was paying himself 10% of his income and using that 10% to build his financial future. So you can start with that. If you can extend it to 20%, even better. Just make it something there you know in your heart of hearts you'll be able to stick to, because again, progress beats perfect. It's always better to be able to do something consistently. One thing I've learned in my life is easier to do something regularly than try and say I will do it one day. One day when I earn this amount of money, I will be able to save this amount. Life doesn't work like that. Start with what you earn now. Be allocating it across those 4 buckets. Make sure there's always something for growth. Eventually, as your income grows and as that bucket grows, you will see the returns. Now, something else I wanted to cover was how I handle lump sums, because it's not all my income that comes every month. Sometimes some of us get bonuses. You might get a commission, you might get some transfer or huge sum of money that is paid to you. How do you handle your money in those instances? As much as possible, what I do is I still allocate across those same 4 buckets that I would have done if it was a monthly income, but the way I treat it differs. So for the giving bit of it, ties I was going to give it anyway, I would take it out then. But anything else that wasn't going to be a lump sum payment, like I won't do a lump sum payment of black tax because I received a lump sum amount of money. No, that black tax stays monthly. If I look at my growth buckets, that one, I prioritize the growth buckets. I increase that percentage. In some cases, I take it all the way to 50% or more, because most of my expenses are monthly anyway. So I don't need to increase the life bucket. The life bucket can still take from the monthly income. But then when it comes to the life buckets, I still look for opportunities to pay for things ahead of time. Typically, you have discounts when you pay for services on an annual basis. So if it's a subscription, for instance, like I typically use Amazon Fresh, right? I prefer to pay for a year. It's that same mindset that I apply to other things. So if it's something I can buy in bulk and pay once and forget about, I do that. And then that one, sometimes I'll take a small portion out of that for enjoyment as well, because really, you need to excite yourself. When that bonus is coming, you need to put money into something that excites you. Personally, growing my growth bucket excites me. So it makes me happy to know I'm going to get this lump sum of money and I can throw it into my investment portfolio. But for some people, they need that extra motivation that, oh, I also have some extra money that I can use to just maybe buy a phone that I always wanted to buy, or buy this bag that I've always wanted to buy, or go on a trip, so you can use that to plan ahead of time as well. So that's how I basically treat my bulk sum payments. Still on that black tax, there are exceptions where you pay for certain things on an annual basis. Let's say, for instance, you're supporting someone with their rent. Then it will make sense. You're not going to be giving them monthly rent, because rent in Nigeria is not monthly. So in that kind of scenario, you could also use bulk sum for that, right? It's not as if never use bulk sum for black tax. Nothing that we're discussing is rigid. This is not cast in stone. If next month comes up and you receive your income and you try to apply this budget to it, and you see that you need to adjust certain things, feel free to adjust it. I look at my budget every month, because I try to apply the bucket every month. And as I'm trying to apply it, sometimes I realize, okay, maybe I might need to tweak a little, but it shouldn't be drastic changes. You shouldn't go from I allocated 20% for growth, but this month 0 growth. No, you should make sure that you're always fueling your growth engine, because that is the one bucket that no one else will push for. Your friends can say, oh, let's take a trip to Ibiza. That's your fun bucket. Your parents can say, oh, send money to your younger brother. That's your giving bucket. Your landlord will collect rent, otherwise you're out on the streets. That's your life bucket. Nobody is going to call you and say, pay money to your savings account or pay money to your investment account. No one. There's no reminder. There's no pressure. If you leave it, if you don't make it a habit, that your 12-month financial goal will be very difficult to achieve. You need to make it a habit of giving yourself that internal motivation, because that's the only way we'll be able to achieve that financial goal that you have. So I'll share the link to my budgeting template in the video description, so you can download it and play with it. So you can feel free to edit it and tweak it to your own heart's content, but make sure you make room for your growth engine. So that's all for today. See you then.